Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by our good friends at Prize Picks and the CLNS Media Network. My pleasure this week to introduce a new member to the rotation and a colleague of mine who does excellent work for CLNS Cincy with a Y.com. His name is Alex Frank. Again, covers the Bearcats. He covers a lot of college sports in the area, and he is an avid golfer. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But on this podcast, Alex Frank, I wanted to ask your opinion of what you thought of what the Bengals have done so far in this offseason, their roster building. The title of the podcast is, what is there to like about what the Bengals have done so far in this offseason? Yeah, they can be criticized, but I think there's a lot of good to be taken from the way the Bengals have approached this offseason. Give me your jumping off point for that topic.
Well, first off, Mike, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be a part of the rotation now on this great podcast that you do. And with the Bengals, I think the one thing I really like that they've done is they've solidified what they want their identity to be. Duke Tobin said it best. We found our receivers. The rest of the NFL can find their own. So that was the biggest development so far this offseason. But then in the draft, and a lot of our colleagues on the Bengals beat, such as Paul Dehner Jr. and yourself, they really, I think the theme of the draft was Al Golden was given the keys to make his defense. And I really like the Bengals picks. I know Shamar Stewart has some questionable parts of his game, his lack of productivity in college, but you look at the tape and the traits are there. And I also really like the other picks the Bengals made. Demetrius Knight Jr. at linebacker, Barrett Carter. The Bengals, I think you're going to see this season, and Mike, you can probably attest to this because you're around the team and in the facility, they might have a change at linebacker in terms of the personnel. Jermaine Pratt may be on his way out. Akeem Davis-Gaither left in free agency, so they may go younger. And don't forget, Al Golden was the linebackers coach the last time he was here, so he knows
Absolutely.
He knows how to develop linebackers, and he did that with Jermaine Pratt and Davis-Gaither and Logan Wilson. Look what they did in 2021 in the playoff run. So I really like a lot what the Bengals have done this offseason. I get a lot of fans were unhappy with their, maybe lack of aggressiveness in free agency, but as you told me, they believe, particularly on defense, that they're not going to be nearly as bad as they were last year. So maybe just they changed their defensive coaching staff. I really like that. They changed, they got rid of Sheldon Rankins. They're going to potentially let Jermaine Pratt go. Sam Hubbard retired. They have a lot of change going on that side of the ball. Perhaps the theme of this offseason, I've thought about this a lot, is retaining the guys that are going to help you win games, like Jamar Chase, like T. Higgins, like B.J. Hill, like Mike Gesicki. So far, all the guys except for Trey Hendrickson, which hopefully that's
a big piece, Alex. Though.
It is.
You must admit.
Oh, it is. Trust me, it is. But so far, a lot of guys that Joe Burrow has said needs to be here. They're going to be here for the long term, so that's a good thing. So I think you take the good with the, what the fans wish they would have done, but I think so far it's been a solid offseason. It's been a good offseason, but I think it's also an element of I need to see it on the field at training camp, preseason, and then in week one, because we all know the Bengals in September, Mike. I feel like that's what I need to see, but overall, solid, like it.
So here's the way I want, or I think fans should approach it this offseason: depth versus productivity. And what the Bengals have, I think, done a really good job of doing, Alex, is they've built their depth. You can argue with the productivity all you want, but the depth at positions like offensive line, running back, tight end, they had the depth at the wide receiver, and there was really no need to build at that position through the draft or free agency. But when you take a look at also the depth now, at defensive edge, Shamar Stewart, Cam Sample in backing up Joseph Osai. And on the other side of it, you have Miles Murphy, Cedric Johnson behind Trey Hendrickson. And those positions are obviously going to rotate. But you have a lot of bodies there. And at the linebacker position, to me, this was one of the bigger concerns going into the offseason. How would the Bengals help Al Golden rebuild his linebacking core. And when you take a look at what they've been able to do, you mentioned the drafting of Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter, two pieces that I think are going to be instrumental this year. And you add in Logan Wilson and Oren Burks, and they have Shaka Hayward and Muma Injong Meta. You have pieces there that are definitely going to be able, if nothing else, have position battles in training camp. And that's really what you want. My biggest concern, Alex Frank, is the safety position. That is, without question, their big concern going into training camp. Will the pieces there, do they have enough? That is the biggest question. Jordan Battle and Geno Stone. And then you have Dejon Anthony, Tyson Anderson, Jalen Key, and PJ Jules. That doesn't instill a lot of confidence at the back end of the defense. But for the most part, the Bengals have addressed depth in this offseason roster build.
You said it so perfectly, Mike, because I think along with that, the way I look at it is they identified what their strengths are and they doubled down. Their strengths on offense are their wide receivers. You sign Chase and Higgins, and then you have Andre Yosivas, who had, I think, a solid second season. I'm excited to see what he can do now that he understands this offense and has had a full season with Joe Burrow. They also, again, extended Mike Gesicki, so they have that weapon at tight end that they can use. And then on defense, they realized, okay, our biggest strength was edge rusher. So regardless of what happens with Trey Hendrickson, they re-signed Osai. They're going to get Cam Sample back. They drafted Shamar Stewart. So I'm really excited to see what that position looks like. You have depth there at your only position of strength on defense. But you're right. When I hear those names you mentioned, Mike, at safety, I'm like, okay, who are those guys? I don't know anything about those guys. I'd feel a little more confident if I knew that Mike Hilton was going to be here in 2025 because he's a veteran and he's had some good seasons and he's had some really good moments in Cincinnati, but he's not. Like, I was thinking about the secondary the other day. I'm like, who can we as fans and who can Bengals fans get excited about? Cam Taylor-Britt? Okay, fine, but he's coming off a really inconsistent season, as you know. So, what's Dax Hill going to look like coming back from injury? What's DJ Turner going to look like coming back from injury? Is Geno Stone going to carry over the end of his season last year, which was good, to this 2025 season? So there are definitely a lot of concerns about the secondary. But I'll say this, if that pass rush, and if Hendrickson plays in 2025, which I think he will,
yes,
if that pass rush and stopping the run, if that's good, that makes the secondary's job easier, because then they're not having to make so many plays and make tackles. They can just, stay back in coverage, man-to-man coverage, whatever it is, and the front seven is making plays. So I think that's where I have hope for this Bengals defense, because I don't think it can be that bad. Like, go back and watch.
Hope is not a strategy.
No,
Alex.
it's not.
And that is where I think a lot of Bengals fans are legitimately concerned about the way the Bengals have approached this offseason. I just like the way they built through the draft. I personally did like their draft. I know a lot of people didn't like, obviously, Demetrius Knight Jr. being taken in the second round. They thought that was a reach. And I get that. I understand that totally. But the rest of the draft, in terms of their pieces, Shamar Stewart, tremendous tape that he presented on film to scouts throughout the offseason, and when a lot of these scouts were evaluating tape, his tape just jumped off the screen at you. They also got, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, Dylan Fairchild and Jalen Rivers, two pieces of an offensive line that I think they're going to build around. But back to the defense, Alex. When you take a look at their corners, this can go one of two ways to me. It can be a position of strength that Cam Taylor-Britt gets back to the level of play he demonstrated in 2023. And on the other side, if Dax Hill is healthy, I think they want him on the outside with DJ Turner as an option there as well. Push Josh Newton, the second-year player out of TCU, inside to the nickel position, taking over for Mike Hilton, because Josh Newton is arguably one of their best tacklers, even though he was a rookie last year, one of their best and most aggressive players in the secondary, put him at nickel, where you can also cover for him a little bit in terms of scheme and coverages and whatnot. I think that would be a good way to approach the secondary. And I think they have enough pieces back there. Again, hope is not a strategy, but I do believe they think that they have enough pieces on the corners. To me, it's the middle, the spine of this defense has to get quicker and more accurate in tackle and bringing players to the ground.
Oh, you said it so perfectly. And not only that, they got to stop giving up explosive plays. I mean, how many times last year would you see a receiver like in the Denver game, even though the Bengals won that game, like Marvin Mims had 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
Great example, actually.
2 deep ball touchdowns. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's still a weakness. So, again, you have a lot of guys that you're hoping can step up and prevent those explosive plays, but there's still so much unproven pieces in the secondary. Mike, it wasn't that long ago where Chidobe Awuzie and Mike Hilton were Pro Football Focus's top-ranked corner duo. I mean, where's that been? Now, Awuzie did get injured, unfortunately, in 22, and he wasn't the same in 23. But still, like, have the Bengals done enough in the draft? Because they haven't done enough in free agency. Have they done enough to get to the post-Jesse Bates era to where they're still strong in the secondary? But also, I'll say this, and this is where Al Golden comes into play. Now, his position expertise the last time he was here wasn't secondary. But I really do believe this. With Lou Anarumo, he did so many great things here. I'm not going to deny that. He took the Bengals defense and the Bengals to the Super Bowl, and his defense was arguably the biggest reason why they went on that Super Bowl run. But I think, and I thought about this after the Tennessee game in 23, when the Bengals get pummeled 27-3. I said to myself, has his scheme gone stale? Has his scheme at Lou Anarumo's defensive scheme gone stale? Because the players who were here in the Super Bowl run had regressed. So now you get a new defensive coordinator and his new staff. You bring in some new players, some new faces, and sometimes a change of scenery, sometimes fresh bodies and a breath of fresh air is good. And even though you still have your veterans like Hendrickson, like Logan Wilson, you still need to change. And it's not just in the secondary. It's in the front 7. It's getting rid of guys who weren't productive last year and bringing in guys who you know are going to help you fix the things that were problems last year. Stopping the run, getting the pass rush up the middle so Hendrickson doesn't have to single-handedly win games for the Bengals defensive line by himself, which he did at times last year, including at Pittsburgh in the last game of the regular season. So that's where I'm at. I agree with a lot of things you said, Mike, because they have a lot of secondary pieces, as you mentioned, but there's still so much unproven within that secondary. Like Cam Taylor-Britt, is he going to be 23 or is he going to be last year?
That is a great question. That is one of the biggest questions I think the Bengals have to find out early on this offseason, or in training camp, I should say, in the preseason. Training camp, preseason, they have to find out if Cam Taylor-Britt has shaken off whatever the heck that was in 2024, and can he get back to the confident, aggressive style that he played with, almost with reckless abandon. You don't want to have a cornerback play carelessly, but you do want him playing without any hesitation. And in 23, I thought Cam Taylor-Britt really walked that fine line and ran that fine line very, very well. They need to see if he can get back to that level of play, that level of fearless play, because if he can't, then they're really screwed. They're in big time trouble if he can't get back to that level. I will tell you this, Alex, and the audience here to the Jungle Roar podcast, in talking with Geno Stone last week in the Bengals locker room, I definitely sensed a chip on the shoulder. He knows what all of us are saying about that secondary. He knows what all of us are saying about the safety room, that they're either old, slow, or ineffective and didn't, do a good enough job tackling through large portions of that 2024 season. I think that chip on the shoulder is going to help them. and help Geno Stone. Geno Stone knows he has to pick up his level of play this year. I want to see how that process develops. I think he will be a rock in the middle of that defense. What I would really like to see, and I think it's a possibility, one of those veteran free agents still on the market, like a Justin Simmons, who played many years with the Denver Broncos at a very high level. Does he, in his early 30s, have anything left in the tank? If he does, maybe he brings like Von Bell did, only with a little more speed than Von Bell, a lot more speed than Von Bell had at the end. Bring him in and see if he can help Geno Stone, and that would have a domino effect down the ladder throughout the secondary. Talking with Alex Frank of CLNSCincy.com here on this edition of the Jungle Roar podcast. Want to tell you about Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. I said 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineups. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes, and we all have them, Alex, into tickets into basketball's championship series. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you in the Takes Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the championship. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. Every Tuesday, by the way, Prize Picks will discount several projections on the board, usually by 15% to 25%. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play only $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Basketball playoffs, as I mentioned, are here, and the action is heating up on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Back with Alex Frank here on the Jungle Roar podcast. Alex Frank does a great job, along with yours truly, on the CLNS Cincy website, covering all things Cincinnati sports. But today, we're talking specifically the Cincinnati Bengals. What is there to like about what they've done in the offseason? We've talked about the linebacker position. I like the way they've beefed that up. I like the fact that they have given their new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, some tools with which to work in the front seven, because I think this defense is going to be very, very versatile. Moving chess pieces on the chessboard is the analogy that Al Golden used a lot during the draft. I think they've done that for him. What about the offensive side of the ball? What about protecting Joe Burrow in the middle of that offensive line? Definitely and certainly understandably a point of focus of concern for a lot of Bengal fans after they watched Joe Burrow get sacked numerous times last year with pressure over the middle. Their left guard and right guard needed to be rebuilt, and I think they've gone a long way, Alex, in doing that. They've drafted Dylan Fairchild to compete with Cordell Volson for left guard. They drafted Jalen Rivers in the 5th round. He provides some tackle depth, but he can also move inside in a pinch and play guard there. And, of course, they signed free agent Lucas Patrick out of New Orleans. He will battle with Cody Ford at the right guard position. I mention all of these names, Alex, and yes, Alex Kappa is gone to the Las Vegas Raiders, but Cordell Volson is coming back. He was benched last year. There's no doubt that his job is on the line, and I think a lot of fans would like to see Dylan Fairchild step in and win that job. Heck, even offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher acknowledged during the draft that job is his to win. Zach Taylor said the same thing. That left guard job is there for the taking for Dylan Fairchild. What did you make of what the Bengals did along their interior offensive line?
Well, here's the thing. I think you're in a good spot where you have your tackles solidified in Orlando Brown Jr. and Amarius Mims. Talk about a hit last year in the draft. Amarius Mims was just that in the first round. So you're good there. You know you have a center in Ted Karras who's solid. So I like that the Bengals took two guards in the draft. They drafted Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia, who played with Amarius Mims. And then you think about the fact that, he's going to come in, and the way he said about protecting Joe Burrow, that's something he's going to live and die by each day. I think the Bengals need an offensive lineman with that mentality. And so I'm excited to see, because Scott Peters and Dan Pitcher went to a workout at Georgia and saw Fairchild there. So they know there's already some familiarity there. And then again, with Peters being the new offensive line coach, I definitely think that the Bengals haven't done nearly enough, as much as I would like as a fan, along the interior line, but they have depth to where they can mix and match up, some different combinations. But I still think that they need to maybe go out and get a guy like Brandon Scherf or Dalton Risner, because let's be honest, the Bengals have their identity on offense, but it's not going to be an identity if they can't keep number 9 off the turf. So,
right.
And I'll also say this: getting a guy like Taj Brooks in the 6th round, who can potentially be a blitz, someone that can pick up the blitz as a running back. I remember when the Cincinnati Bearcats played Texas Tech last year, Taj Brooks ran for, I believe, 172 yards.
Ran all over the Bearcats. Yes, he did.
But it wasn't just the Bearcats he did that against. But that aside, you have a running back who just looks like he's built. He looks rugged. He looks like a guy that's, willing to pick up a linebacker coming in hot, or a safety coming in on a blitz. So I think the Bengals really did a good job of, not just taking one guard in the draft. They signed Lucas Patrick, who had a solid career in New Orleans. So again, this is about getting rid of guys who aren't productive and replacing them with guys who are. And again, a good position to start is you have your tackles and you have Ted Karras. And the thing about the Bengals offensive line is they've been trying to fix it for years. They had that huge splurge of free agency in 22 with Kappa, as you mentioned, Ted Karras and La'el Collins. They went out and got Orlando Brown in 2023. Last year, they went out and got Trent Brown. It didn't work out. But the good news is they also drafted Amarius Mims. We can't say the Bengals haven't tried relentlessly to fix the offensive line. They certainly have. And again, that's where I mentioned Lou Anarumo's scheme had gone stale. Maybe the same happened with Frank Pollock, who I really liked in 21 and 22. So they go out and get Scott Peters, who comes from the Browns, who have a good offensive line. And now you bring him in with his mentality, new scheme. And you also have a guy like Chase Brown and Joe Burrow's ability to extend plays. So the Bengals offensive line, I think what I would tell fans is, and maybe they feel this, the Bengals offensive line doesn't have to be like the Eagles or the Chiefs, or name me a team with another great offensive line, the Ravens, Buffalo. They don't have to be Detroit. They don't have to be that. They just have to be middle of the pack, keep number 9 upright, only allow
let me jump in here, Alex. I think they do have to be closer to the Detroit line. I think they have to dominate. If they're going to keep Joe Burrow up, you have defenses all along the AFC North and all around the AFC in general that are designed to get the quarterbacks like Joe Burrow. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is a target. Josh Allen does what he does. He brings some unique skills. But there are a lot of defenses. Almost every defense in the AFC North is designed to stop Joe Burrow, because they know he is the one player, like Tom Brady was back in the 2000s and 2010s in the AFC East. If you weren't stopping Tom Brady, you had no chance of competing in that division. Period. End of story. I think, and you can make the argument that Lamar Jackson is that way for the Baltimore Ravens, but I think if you give the truth serum to a lot of GMs in the AFC North and in the AFC in general, I would tell you that I think they think Joe Burrow can beat you in more ways than Lamar Jackson can. Lamar Jackson is arguably a top 3 athlete in the NFL. There's no questioning that. But when you look at what Joe Burrow can do, and the ways he can beat you and dissect the defense, the one thing you do have to do with Joe Burrow, you have to get in his face. You have to get him off the spot, just like you had to get Tom Brady off the spot. And the one way the Bengals can, two things. Joe Burrow can get rid of the ball quickly, like that's what Tom Brady used to always do. His release time was like that. But Joe Burrow likes to watch a play develop and likes to have a play, give a play time to ruminate, if you will, like a fine wine or a stew. He likes that play to develop a little bit. To do that, you need an offensive line that can give him that extra second, maybe even half second. That extra time he has not had the luxury to enjoy over the last couple of years because the pressure has been coming up the middle. You need I think, a superior offensive line to give him that type of time. And that's what the Bengals, I think, realize.
Man, 1 second. I mean, when Bengals fans hear 1 second, if Quentin Spain held his block on
I know.
for one more second, I mean, look, I think about that play more often now than I did after the Super Bowl.
I think every Bengal fan does.
They should. It was right there. I mean, the play was right there. And you know what? I agree with what you're saying because of who Joe Burrow is. I say this, he's a mobile Peyton Manning because Burrow reads a defense, as you said. He reads the defense pre-snap and post-snap exactly like how Peyton Manning used to do. But the only difference is Joe Burrow is so good on the run. And Dan Orlovsky of ESPN talks about this. Whenever he's stepping up in the pocket and getting out of it, he keeps two hands on the football and his eyes downfield. So that's really, really key. But you're right. That's why Bengals fans are so up in arms about getting interior offensive linemen, because if you pressure him up the middle, as you said, and you get in his face, that's where he can't be effective. And the Bengals' identity, they wanted to be driven through Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, and rightfully so, the same way it was Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne. Well, one difference, the Colts had an offensive line that could keep Peyton Manning off the turf, led by Jeff Saturday, another offensive lineman I can't remember off the top of my head. But you're right, Mike, and I actually do really agree now with what you're saying, because I know Joe Burrow and his mobility and his ability to extend plays can mask the Bengals' offensive line deficiencies. But you're right. Imagine if he didn't have to do that. Imagine if he could just sit back in the pocket, pick apart, and go through to his fifth read. One play that I remember from his second season, it was against Pittsburgh. It was on the road. And I think Burrow went through his progressions to his fifth read and found Chase cutting across the middle in the back of the end zone because the offensive line held up on their blocks. He was able to take a 5-step drop or 7-step drop. Give me more of that. And this offense, I mean, look, it was really good last year, even though the offensive line, again, wasn't great. But imagine if Burrow had that extra second. This offense could be virtually unstoppable. You can stop it right now, but as you said, if you don't get pressure in Burrow's face, good luck to any defense facing this Bengals offense in 2025.
Well, that's the whole point of re-signing T. Higgins and Jamar, right? Because having to defend both of them on the field at the same time is entirely different, a completely different ball game than having just one of them on the field at the same time. Throw in Chase Brown, like you said, or let's say that Taj Brooks makes an impact as a rookie, and he makes an impact for, let's say, 5 to 10 snaps a game. It could be those 5 to 10 snaps a game in those one-possession games against the AFC North that we've heard so much about over the last couple of years that could make a difference. We got to run here. Alex, I want to thank you for your time. Obviously, we can follow you along on CLNS with a Y.com. You do tremendous work helping me out, populate that website, and bring the latest and greatest information to the Cincinnati sports fan. By the way, you are a golf fan. I noticed the hat. The U.S. Open 2006 Wingfoot. What Scotty Scheffler did on Sunday was, in a word, historic, but just amazing to watch. Just amazing.
It's amazing to watch. Yeah, it's amazing to watch an athlete like him, who we know is great, be at the top of his game. I mean, you look at golf in the PGA Tour the last month plus. I mean, it's been unbelievable. The Masters with Rory McIlroy, which was one of the best sporting events I've seen in recent memory. And then you look at what Scheffler did. I mean, 32 under par. I mean, that's an average of being 8 under par per round, which in of itself is amazing. So you're absolutely right. He's been on fire. The PGA Championship at Quail Hollow down in North Carolina is going to be spectacular in 2 weeks. The weather's hopefully going to get back to golf weather.
Yeah, I need to get on the course, Alex. I need desperately to get on the course. I'm having a little bit of spring fever myself, but I do appreciate your time. He is Alex Franco, CLNSCincy.com. My name is Mike Petralia Trags, and this has been the Jungle Roar podcast powered by our friends at Prize Picks and CLNS Media. Until next time, keep that jungle roaring.